Thank you, Michael, and thank you, everyone, from the Real Truth About Health Conference. Stephen and John, it's just been such an honor working with you, and thank you for having me back 3 years in a row. You know, you're going to have some of the most amazing speakers over the next 17 days telling you what to eat, but I thought what I would do is show you how to make it. And so I have a new book coming out with over 150 plant-exclusive, vegan, whole food recipes sweetened naturally with fruit. And I am going to attempt to do 15 recipes today. You don't need to take notes because we created a beautiful PDF, too many words to put in YouTube show notes. So if you just email help@chefaj.com, it would be our pleasure to email you this beautiful PDF with all of the recipes. And that way I can just go a little bit quickly, or is that a word, quickly or more quickly, rather than saying the amounts of each one. What's really nice about this book is every recipe has a photo, and we're going to be making this one as part of our 15. I chose recipes that not only were some of my personal favorites, but recipes also that anyone with a reasonable amount of kitchen fitness could make, and also that didn't take too long for the cooking or the cooling time. And that way I can get you a breadth and depth of different recipes. Some are very rich, meaning they're higher in calorie density, higher in fat, always coming from things like nuts and seeds rather than oils. Some are low fat, but none of them have any processed sugar. None of them have oil. None of them have salt. And I think today, I don't think any of them even have any flour. So the first recipe I'm going to make is called sweet cornbread muffins. Now, if you're eating a lot of sugar, real or fake, some of these recipes may not taste sweet enough for you at first. So that's why we're going to do some that are very sweet, some that are subtly sweet. But I can give you tips and tricks on how to make things taste sweeter. And during the last half hour of this presentation, I'll be going to my computer to answer any questions you have. So I've already preheated my oven. And what I'm going to do is measure my ingredients in the blender. See, I love not having to wash a lot of dishes. And what I love about these high-powered blenders is there's actually a measuring cup. It's scored on it. So I don't have to put things in one cup to put it in another cup. One of the secrets really to cooking in general, healthy cooking or not, is to do a technique that we learned the first day in culinary school called mise en place. You can't see my whole kitchen, but every recipe is set up and the amounts are already measured. And I do that even if I'm not doing a presentation, because it makes it go much more quickly than running to the cabinet and the cover and the refrigerator looking for all your ingredients. And I've done that with all 15 recipes, which is why I think I'm going to be able to get them all done in this time. So for the sweet cornbread muffins, I already have, if you wouldn't mind lowering the camera, in my blender some unsweetened apple juice, which you can certainly make yourself or just buy an organic brand of apple juice at regular markets. Now, the only sweetener I use is dates. And usually I use them whole. And you're going to see a couple of demonstrations of how I use them whole. Sometimes I make them into a paste, which I'm going to show you how. But in certain recipes, I use date syrup. This is the brand I prefer because it's organic and it's one ingredient. Now, over 20 years ago, before I gave up processed sugar, or when I gave up processed sugar, which was July 6, 2003, I used to make my own date syrup. And in my first book on processed, I even had a recipe. But it's so labor intensive. You have to blend and boil and reduce. And now you can buy date syrup at Walmart. And by the way, I know people watching this live in all different parts of the world in the United States. One of the things that little beep means my oven's preheated. I make sure that even if I buy my ingredients from stores near me, like Trader Joe's or Whole Foods or Sprouts or even Costco, every ingredient that I use in every cooking demonstration, it can be purchased at Walmart and mostly also at the 99-cent store. So I try not to use any special ingredients. But like I say, date syrup, not only available on Amazon or on the company website with a Chef AJ code for 10% off, readily available at Walmart. And most Walmarts are open till midnight if you run out of date syrup. Comes in different sizes. Actually, it comes in a gallon size. I'm out of that one, so I'm just going to take it and I'm going to measure it because I love that I can just pour it in and go up to the line with what I need. Now, I'm only using a half a cup, which is actually 8 tablespoons or 24 teaspoons, which means that each muffin is only going to have 2 teaspoons of sweetener in it. I've already have measured out my organic medium grind cornmeal and my gluten-free rolled oats, and they're going right in the blender. My baking powder and baking soda, which if you want, you can get sodium-free. I recommend at least getting them aluminum-free. And my apple cider vinegar. Apple cider vinegar activates the baking powder and baking soda so that you can get things to rise without having to use eggs. I know nowadays they have a vegan egg that you can use, and there's flax eggs. But remember, I've been doing this for 47 years. So I had to figure out how to do it before all these newfangled, if you will, products were invented. So I'm just going to blend in the blender for just a couple of seconds. But I forgot one ingredient, and I'll go get it right now, the applesauce. That's the one thing I forgot to measure in advance. And I knew, because I make this recipe all the time. I moved from Southern California to Northern California to be part of a huge vegan community. There's like 8,000 of us in this meetup group, and we get together all the time for potlucks. And this is one of their favorite recipes. We serve it not just as a sweet recipe, but often with vegan chilies. And I knew that something was missing because of how thick it was. So there we have a half a cup of an unsweetened applesauce. I actually have 2 recipes, actually 3 in the book to make your own applesauce, which is actually as easy as putting apples in a blender without the core, of course. Applesauce is one of the many wonderful substitutes for oil in baking recipes. Things like applesauce can give moisture, prune puree, pumpkin puree, sweet potatoes, bananas, tofu. These are all things that make things moist without oil. And so by using a blender, all I have to do now is pour it in. So I don't have to take a scoop and make that another thing that I have to wash. I don't worry if each one is perfect. If you are a perfectionist, you can just get a half a cup of measure and get each one to be exactly the same. We love to eat these as dessert. For us, they're sweet enough. If you need them sweeter, they're great to be served with a fruit sweetened jam. I've got recipes in the book for them, but it is so widely available now because so many people, whether they're vegan or not, are trying to avoid refined sugar. And that doesn't just mean white sugar. That means honey, agave, maple syrup, barley malt, rice syrup, even the 0 calories or fake sugars like stevia, erythritol, xylitol, which I think your last speaker, Kim Murphy, did a good job explaining why those are actually less healthy than refined sugar, which is not healthy. I like to use the fruit, the whole fruit, and nothing but the fruit. And that's how I've been doing this for over 20 years. I used to weigh 70 pounds more than I weigh now. And part of the reason that I've been able to lose this weight and keep it off was not eating processed food. So I don't know why that made 11 today. It made 12 yesterday. That's okay. This is a wonderful tool that you can use when you're cooking without oil. These are silicone bakeware. They're oven safe to 450 degrees. They kind of go like this. I call it the drop and plop. And these are so easy to clean and nothing sticks because it pops out. Now, nothing sticks if you let it cool. You have to let baked goods cool, whether they're vegan or not. I find people tend to rush baking. That's why we're only doing certain recipes that don't have long baking times. You need to let things cool before you take them out of the pan. So I'm going to go put this in the oven. I'll be right back. And through the magic of television, they're ready. This is the batch that I made last night. Now, you probably say, why are they so dark? They're cornbread muffins. The reason they're dark is because I use date syrup. Date syrup is not translucent like agave or maple syrup. If that bothers you, what you can do is use whole dates and blend them in, but I just find it's so much easier to just do it this way. So these are wonderful with a bowl of chili as a on-the-go breakfast. And I'll show you the next batch when it's done, and we'll get on to the second recipe. We're kind of going to go from like less sweet to more decadent. The next recipe is called apple pie rice pudding. I created this recipe when I had leftover rice. And usually I do have leftover rice, but I also want to show you that you can use some convenience tools, ideas, that you don't always have to cook rice. So at least where I live, all the stores, even the regular grocery stores, have frozen organic rice, both brown and white, in microwavable packages that take 3 minutes to microwave. And so today I'm using white, but if you don't eat white rice, that's okay. You can use brown rice. You probably could use any whole grain, like even quinoa if you wanted. The thing is you just need the right amount, which is 4 cups. And so what would apple pie rice pudding be without apple? So the thing is I've always liked rice pudding. Even as a kid, it was available. I grew up like going to delis like Nate and Al's in Beverly Hills. And that was one of the few desserts they had on the menu. But when you make rice pudding, at least on the stove, you gotta cook it. But if you do things in the Instant Pot, you can set it and forget it. So the apple I'm using is called the Envy apple because it's my favorite apple. It's the envy of all apples, and I just think it's the most delicious apple. But you could use any apple you wanted. I wouldn't recommend using green apples in some of these desserts, except for maybe like a caramel apple, because they're really kind of tart. So your dessert, when you're using fruit, is only going to be as sweet as your fruit. So for example, a ripe banana is going to be sweeter than a non-ripe banana, but apples tend to be pretty consistently sweet if you get a brand that you like. So I love tools that make things easier. And so a lot of people are familiar with the apple cutter that cuts into 8 slices. I prefer this one. It cuts into 16 slices. Either I'm short or the counter is too low, and then have a little piece on the end that you just kind of poke it out like that. When I eat an apple, I do it that way because I tend to enjoy it more. And then I have this really cool tool called the Vidalia Chop Wizard. And what I do is I am just cutting it into little pieces. You can use this tool for onion. You can use it for zucchini. I love this tool. It's about $20 on Amazon. If you still have a Bed Bath & Beyond near you that takes a coupon, this is where I originally got it. It's a fun tool to use. And also what's really neat about it is, again, it's a measuring cup, because I'm always being mindful, since I'm the one that has to do the dishes here, of using less equipment as possible. I do the same thing with recipes. I try to create the taste and texture I'm going for with as few ingredients as possible, and ingredients that are available in most places. So what's really cool is this measuring cup tells me I have the right amount. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come and put this. And I love that it's even with the best knife skills. I mean, look how beautiful this is. You could probably use a food processor to do this, but I love this. And this grate comes in 3 different sizes, this being the smallest one. So we're going to walk over to the pressure cooker, and we are going to place the ingredients in the pressure cooker. This is a 3-quart Instant Pot. You can use a bigger one if you have it, a 6-quart, an 8-quart, or a 10-quart, but this is the one that we have on the counter all the time because it's small. So I'm going to put my ingredients in. And like I said, all I did was microwave this rice, but you don't have to do that. You can always make the rice from scratch. So we're going to add that to the pressure cooker. The pressure cooker already has my liquids in it, which is a non-dairy unsweetened milk. Now, if this doesn't taste sweet enough for you, the ways you can sweeten it is by adding dates or date syrup, or instead of taking 3 cups of your favorite non-dairy milk, maybe take 1 cup of unsweetened apple juice with 2 cups of non-dairy milk. If you used all apple juice, I think it might be too sweet. But again, the longer you're off sweets, traditional sweets, the more you appreciate the subtle taste and the sweetness in fruit. And so I'm going to take all my beautiful apples and put them in here. What's nice about this is delicious hot when you first make it. We're having our monthly potluck Sunday. So I'll be making something like this. It's delicious cold. It's delicious at room temperature. And also when things are done, I'll also give you some plating techniques that I love. So I'm going to put in some yellow raisins. I just like the taste of yellow raisins better than the dark ones. The dark ones taste too pruny to me. These just taste like little bursts of sweetness. And what's fun about yellow raisins is you don't know to see them in there. So it's like you get this little surprise. I've also used currants in this as well. Or if you don't eat dried fruit, you can omit it entirely. So I'm going to add that to my pressure cooker. I love pressure cooking because you just throw everything in and push a button. I don't really do fancy recipes except maybe twice a year for my husband's birthday and Thanksgiving. My spices are cinnamon and vanilla powder, which I'll talk about throughout this demo. I always say get the biggest and best you can afford in terms of ingredients and equipment. I love the spices at Local Spicery. It's a local spice shop. They sell online. It's small batch, in glass, non-irradiated. 2 free samples with my name. I'm not trying to market it. It's just very, very good spices. But apple spice, pie spice, things like pumpkin pie spice, you can make your own. There's recipes if you just Google it with cinnamon, nutmeg, things like this. But I do like to put my pennies towards really quality products, especially when it comes to dessert, because things like vanilla powder, meaning vanilla bean powder, really do make a taste difference, in my opinion, than using imitation vanilla or vanilla extract. And so all we do is we put the pressure cooker on, and then we're going to put on 5 minutes. This is always preset to 5 minutes because it just is, because that's the number that we use the most. So set it, forget it, and we're on to the 3rd recipe. If you didn't have that little beep for the pressure cooker is just saying, is this correct, lady? Yeah, it's correct. If you didn't have a pressure cooker, you could make this just by cooking it on the stove. I would imagine it would take probably 20 minutes. You could probably put all the ingredients in a slow cooker. It would probably take 3 or 4 hours that way. You know, especially if you're new to eating a plant-based diet, one of the easiest ways I think to continue to do it is to get things like a pressure cooker or an Instant Pot, because it helps you get healthy food ready quickly. Here I'm using it for dessert, but we use it for so many reasons. To steam our morning greens, to make soups, stews, chili. You can also make beans in no time, rice. You can make steel cut oat in 5 minutes, oat groats in 5 minutes, artichokes in 7 minutes, corn on the cob in 0 minutes. So it's pretty cool. My book. Okay. Ooh, recipe number 3. One of the things you often get asked as a chef is, what's your favorite recipe? And a lot of chefs say, well, that's like asking me what my favorite kid is. But like, be honest, you probably have a favorite kid, even if you're not going to say which one it is. This next one, 2 of today I'm going to say are my favorite. And I love this recipe for many reasons, mainly because it tastes good, but also because how easy it is to make. This recipe came about when I moved from Southern California to Northern California. We had a farewell party, and 2 of the guests coming from Los Angeles, they got lost, and I didn't think they were coming. And since we were moving in 2 days, all the food from the party went home with the guests. So the party was supposed to go till 5. They showed up at like 10 to 5, and there was no more food because everybody had left. And so I quickly whipped this recipe together, and it since has become one of my favorites. It's called the rustic fruit tart. Going to grab my ingredients. So the first thing we're going to do is make the tart crust. Now the tart crust cooks for about 5 minutes, but the truth is, during the party, when I made this, I didn't cook it because I needed to get them something healthy to eat quickly. So you don't have to cook it, but I find if you want to keep the crusts for a long time, if you cook them just for about 5 minutes, they dry out enough so that you can keep a bunch of them for whenever you have company at the last minute. So here I'm using a food processor. This is the Breville Sous Chef. It's my favorite because I always say get the biggest and best you can afford. And this is the most powerful and best one I've ever used. But there's other good food processors too, the RoboCoupe, the Cuisinart. But I feel like the bigger, the better when it comes to equipment, even if you're just one person. Remember, you can always do a smaller recipe in a bigger piece of equipment. You can't do a big recipe in a smaller. So we are using the S blade. It comes with many blades, but the most common blade, at least for desserts, is the S blade. And if you wonder why it looked a little dirty, it's because I pre-made some of these to show you so they'd be done. So pre-measured, I have my rolled oats. I always use gluten-free. And I also have my cinnamon and my vanilla bean powder. Vanilla bean powder is different than vanilla powder, which is white and processed with dextrose, and it's just not healthy. This is just the pure vanilla bean. It's just more cost effective than actually using a vanilla bean for every single recipe. You can get that many places, Amazon, local spicery, and you can even omit it. It's fine. I mean, sometimes I do, but I would rather have no vanilla than use extract. Also, extract is liquid and it affects the consistency of some of these desserts. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to whir this around in the food processor until it becomes kind of like a breadcrumb consistency. You can go. Now you could say, well, why can't I use oat flour? You certainly could. I like things to have a little bit of a toothsome texture, to be a little bit less processed. Also, oat flour is merely oats that have been ground into a flour. So why not just do it yourself in your high-powered blender and save a few pennies? So then I'm going to add my dates. So I love dates. Dates are nature's candy. They come in so many varieties. And if you've never had them, I really encourage you to try them. Because I used to be, like I said, 70 pounds heavier, an obese sugar addict. I used to start every morning with how many ounces was it? A 32-ounce Coke Slurpee? I don't remember the exact, but whatever the size was at the time before they were having the 256-ounce ones. With 8 pumps of vanilla syrup, I would drink regular Dr. Pepper all day long. And if it weren't for things like dates, I don't think I would ever have kicked the refined sugar habits, because I think of them as you don't have to eat them, but they were a great transition food to get off of sugar. Because when you think about it, well, first of all, in terms of caloric density, sugar is 1,800 calories per pound. There's no fiber, there's no nutrients. Dates are still caloric. I mean, let's face it, they're about 1,300 calories per pound. But they're a whole food. They have fiber, water, vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, antioxidants, micronutrients. And when you eat them, you will feel some fullness, some satiety. You can eat sugar all day and never feel full. And so dates are amazing. All fruit is, but dates particularly in desserts, because they tend to be neutral. I mean, there's other dried fruits like raisins and apricots, cherries, figs. They're good, but they have a more distinct taste, whereas dates just taste sweet to me. I tend to use the Deglet Nor dates because I use so many, and this is the most cost-effective I found, especially at Costco if you have them. This is $5.99 for 2.5 pounds. That's about $2.39 a pound. Costco also sells medjool dates, but these are much more expensive. A pound and a half is $12. And so I will be using some medjool dates. If you're going to eat a date as a dessert or snack, then of course I recommend the medjool. Actually, I recommend the bari the most. Those are even more expensive. But for the recipe purposes, I don't think it makes much difference. And I actually prefer the Deglet Nor because they tend to be a little bit drier, and the medjools sometimes make my crusts a little bit too wet. So I've already measured these dates out in advance, and I'm placing them in my food processor with the oats. And this could take about a minute or two, because what I'm looking for is for a ball to form, for the food processor to slow down. That's why I love doing hands-on cooking the most. When possible, I go to a place called Rancho La Puerta, where you can join me if you want to learn hands-on cooking. And I'm going to be going to the Stanford Inn to teach it, because then I can tell you to feel it, to what it's supposed to feel like. But basically what I'm trying to do is make kind of a ball so that everything forms together, because we're also going to be doing this in the next recipe, which is the orange chocolate mousse tort. So this is basically a technique where you take either a grain or a nut plus a date to make some kind of a crust. When you think about a pie crust in the traditional world, it's flour. Usually it's pretty much always white flour. It's either margarine or butter or lard. It's sugar, it's salt. And really, do pie crusts without the filling taste very good? Do people go around eating pie crusts? I like my crusts to taste as good as the pie. And this crust actually tastes like a snickerdoodle cookie. So if you didn't like the filling, you could just eat these as giant snickerdoodles. So this is going to run for a minute. I won't talk when the machine is on, and you will see, because we'll have the camera facing towards it, that it will start to slow down. That's it. I can tell you exactly how long that was. That was, believe it or not, that was 39 seconds, because my food processor has a timer on it. So when it's done, what we're going to do is to take our baking mat. I love to use these permanent silicone baking mats, because as wonderful as parchment paper is, it's really not environmentally friendly because you can only use it once. Yes, this will eventually discolor a bit, but this is fantastic. What I like about it more than the traditional Silpat or silicone mat is it has firm sides, so it stays stable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and just dump it on my mat for now. And I'm going to show you what to do in just a second. So you can take a pie tin. Let me see if I have it to show you. You can take something like this and make a fluted pie tart, and it would be very beautiful. But one thing I've learned is a lot of people say they don't want dessert, but then when it's an individual dessert, they all of a sudden want it. There's something really nice about having individual desserts that are plated for you that you don't have to cut, and it makes it a lot easier. So what you can do if you were using the pie pan is you press it out. But what I like to do is I generally do 4 with this size recipe. You can do 6 and they would be smaller. If you want it to be this size, it would be 4. And, you could be perfect if you want. You can get a measuring cup or a food scale. I'm not interested in perfection. I've lived my life by the motto that done is more profitable than perfect. So I'm going to do is just roll these in a little ball. Now you can eat these raw. These don't have to be cooked, but they do have a little bit of stickiness in it that I want to get rid of, which is why I do like to bake them for 5 minutes. So this one's bigger, so you can rob Peter to pay Paul if you want them perfect, but they don't have to be. And so then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to press them down to make a circle. And again, if you're somebody that wants them absolutely perfect, there are molds that you can get to make them absolutely perfect, but it's called a rustic fruit tart because I actually like the irregularity. I like it to look homemade. But if you are a person that wants it to be, more like a French pastry and perfect, then you want to get yourself a miniature fluted tart and do it that way. And then it will be perfect. But again, once I get the berries in here, you're going to see any kind of crusts that maybe didn't come out perfect. It's going to be covered by the berries. So and I keep turning it over to get the stickiness to not stick. So I'm just trying to make like a big pancake and spread it out. The bigger I spread it out, the more surface area I have to fill it. And by the way, we're going to be filling this with berries, but there's no reason you couldn't fill it with other things. Like, for example, we're going to be making a butterscotch pudding later. That would be absolutely delicious in here. It doesn't have to be berries, but berries are some of my favorite fruit, especially strawberries. But I'm not using strawberries because we're going to use that in a different recipe. We're going to use raspberries and blueberries because they're so beautiful. So after you get them pressed out, you want to build the lip. And this is a fun thing to get kids involved in because, they can't cut themselves. They could be really fun. And cooking is a fun thing because, if you do make a mistake, you get to eat your mistake. And my motto, which was the motto of my culinary school, is it's not what you can make, it's what you can fix. And some of my best recipes have come from mistakes. There's very few things you can't fix in cooking. I would say if you put too much salt, that could be hard to fix, but I don't eat any salt, so that doesn't happen. I don't say don't eat any salt. I don't cook with salt. What I'm kind of doing is I'm just kind of pushing the middle to get that nice little kind of bird's nest in there. And obviously too much hot pepper, those kind of things are hard to fix without making another whole batch to dilute it. But so many other things, can be fixed. And some of the best recipes actually have come from mistakes. If you remember that Reese's peanut butter commercial, you got chocolate on my peanut butter. You got peanut butter on my chocolate. Well, that's why I love hands-on cooking, because we have the chance to be creative and create recipes together when we do that. But there's unfortunately no culinary schools where I live now. So I got to go to Mexico and other places in order to do my passion, which is to teach cooking. So there we've got some nice little circles, and then we got 2 more to do. And I have gotten 6 out of these. I would not do 8. You could do 8. The more you do, the more work you have to do. And so what we're going to do, I have to bake these after the muffins come out, is we're going to macerate berries. Now, again, you can serve this like this, but by cooking it just for that 5 minutes, it gives it a nice little firmness and dryness that I actually prefer, unless you're going to eat it right now. If you were a raw foodist, then you wouldn't cook it, because I'm told by my friend Lissa Maris of Raw Food Romance that you now can get sprouted raw oats, which means when she comes visit me in May, she could eat this recipe. And for her, what I could do is dehydrate it. So a lot of people think, and it's getting warm in here. Can we lower the temperature? Yeah, I've got a lot of lights going on. So macerate, a lot of people have heard the word macerated berries. They might have seen it on a restaurant menu, vanilla ice cream with macerated berries. So they think it has sugar. Well, in general, berries are macerated in a simple syrup with sugar, but the word macerate literally just means to soften. And so you can macerate in anything. Just wash my hands. Did you hear that I was hot? Okay. Hello, just washing my hands. Okay. So what we're going to do, and I probably should have done this at the start of the recipe, is we're going to take our berries. Here I have raspberries and blueberries, and I'm going to macerate them in 1 to 2 tablespoons of any liquid. I mean, people that drink alcohol might macerate them in alcohol. You can even use water to macerate. You could use a little unsweetened fruit juice like orange juice or really any flavor, apple juice. What I like to macerate in is balsamic vinegar, a good quality reduced balsamic vinegar, not the regular kind at the salad bar. It's very sour with 6% acidity. I like to use brands like California Balsamic, which is 6% acidity. There's no sugar in it. It's reduced, meaning it's cooked and cooked and cooked, so it's thick and syrupy. I also use these for salad dressings. And I let the flavor of vinegar be informed by what the fruit is. And so this is blueberry. And so I'm not even going to measure. Well, I'll measure just to see how much I really use. I'll start with 1 tablespoon. Remember, you can always add, you can't take away. And the reason I'm macerating is because when things are macerated, what happens, these berries get soft and they get almost like a cooked texture. If you've ever used frozen fruit, in which you are going to use in a recipe, you know how much softer and liquidy it is. I guess you could use frozen fruit, but then it doesn't have any kind of firmness or bite. And that was exactly 1 tablespoon. So you don't need a lot. If every cup of fruit, maybe 1 tablespoon. And so we should have done this before so that I could show you how they really do soften. But then what I do is I take them and then I put them into my cooked crust. Okay. Oh, this is so good. I don't use a fork. I just pick it up and eat it. And probably my favorite flavor is strawberry, but I've used peaches in here. I have used mango. I've even used, when I haven't had any fresh berries, canned, drained, unsweetened pineapple. And then we always want to take a piece of mint, pretty mint for a garnish. And you can really have this ready in no time. And I'm telling you, this is such an elegant, and it's an absolutely delicious dessert. This would probably cost like, I don't know, $7.99 in a restaurant. We're going to be making a raspberry coulis later. And so once you had that, you could drizzle that over this. But I'll tell you, people love this recipe, even if they are still eating sugar, because it's just basically fruit. You could eat this for breakfast, because think about it. A lot of people eat fruit and oats for breakfast. Well, hello, wouldn't you rather have that? So there we have one of my very favorite recipes in the book, rustic fruit tart.